Good evening. Today we're picking up where we left off last time on Friday. Most notably, congratulations Chick Strong being first. Most notably, now I can double jump. And thank you for the head tats, I appreciate them. Here we are.
Is there something I can help you with, human?
That aura about you. You're a vampire!
And what of it? Will you murder me for that alone? I've picked no quarrel with you.
I mean, to be fair, generally vampires aren't the nicest people.
My name is Orlok Dracul, but you may call me OD. I oversee this library, Miss...
That is a JoJo's reference. His name backwards is Dio.
Miriam. Am I permitted to take out books from this library of yours?
Of course, Miriam. Although you would be my first human patron. The books here are magical tomes that impart power to their readers. As long as you are here, why not avail yourself of their boons?
So the library is really cool. You literally just take out a book, and while you're holding it, you get a bonus.
Be certain to return what you borrow. This is a library, not a bookshop.
It can be kind of cool to just, like, swap around what buffs you have active. And, oh hey, I can, what's the word? I can warp here. Now, I try not to look things up in general. Yep, that's travel. In general, I try not to look things up, but I was curious as to, like, where to get, like, rice and such. So I did look that up, and apparently there's a gentleman in town that I have to rescue. And he's a farmer, and if given seeds, will give me crops after a certain amount of time passes. Just making sure that he's not, like, already here and I forgot about him. Or didn't notice him. Yeah, especially with double jump, it's a lot easier to explore now, so I'm gonna go start looking for him. It is a very Zelda-esque quest, isn't it? Like, oh, Link, you've rescued me. But I am but a farmer, and I have nothing to farm. Oh, hello.
I'm glad me fields are rid of those monsters. But they're in a terrible state. I'll need to replant everything.
What will you grow?
Well, I haven't decided yet. Where are my manners? I'm Harry.
Miriam.
Tell me, Miriam, do you have anything I might be able to grow? Because if you let me do the farming, I'll give you your share of the harvest, and you won't even have to lift a finger.
This is an incredible deal. Man basically walked up to me and said, okay, deal, here's what I'm offering you. I'll do all the work, and I'll give you a fair cut. Yeah, sure.
Oh, alright. I'll keep an eye out.
Good. I'll be waiting in the fields.
Please take this rice seed.
Can you plant this?
Sure, I'll get to work.
like, happy to find a deal that makes both of us happy, I guess. Also, yeah, that flying sword is technically an enemy, but this one's mine. That's also a flying sword. That one isn't an enemy.
What a bloodbath. We were slaughtered.
No, this is Bloodstained, not Bloodbath.
But you're not like us. You're strong. I saw you fighting.
Oh, it was more luck than skill.
Humble, too. My name is Abigail. What's yours?
Miriam.
Well, Miriam, might I ask you a favor? I want to give the dead a proper burial.
Of course.
But that's not going to be possible for some. In the very least, though, I'd like to bury some keepsake for each of them. A Valkyrie like you should have no trouble finding such things.
You like the dress and mask? Thank you. I'm actually trying to find something that's, like, better than the mask. The dress is super nice, though. Fun fact, her tattoos, the flower bits technically aren't actually, tattoos. They're, like, bits of crystal that have, like, grown inside of her and are jutting out. And then the markings around them are, like, seals to keep them from spreading too quickly.
Can I count on you? I'll see that you're rewarded.
I'd be happy to do it.
But these crystals growing inside of her are why she's stronger than normal humans.
Thank you. Then, let me show you. Thank you.
Alright, so basically, the girl in the main room is like, do murder, kill things for me. That one is like, bring me specific items. Yeah, now that I've got double jump, I can actually go back to the ship that I started the game on and access some stuff that I couldn't access last time. It's perfectly safe to consume demon power as long as you never consume an amount that's like from a source larger than your own head. That's generally the rule of thumb. Also, I'm starting to think that even with like double jump, I might not be able to make this jump. If I can, it's gonna be tough. Yeah, the flying sword familiar is really cool. I like it a lot. I wish it was a bit more aggressive. But I still need to, like, train it a bit more, so... I totally feel like I can make that jump if I just tried a bit harder. Also, given that those enemies seem to, like, infinitely spawn, if I could get a familiar that, like, consistently killed them, this might be a decent way to, like, AFK gain levels. Right, yeah, there's stuff here, and then there's stuff all over here, and then there's still this thing. All worth looking into. Take a little rest here, just in case. country dress. I feel like perhaps I was expected to get that one earlier. Oh well. Loot is loot. Fast travel, we take those. Culverin. Small ancestor of the musket used by cavalry. Okay, there's still this and that. I totally think that I can reach that one in the upper right. Like, I know that I get more movement tools over time. So, like, even in, like, the scenario where I end up giving up on that, I will be able to reach it eventually. I just feel like I ought to be able to get that right now. More seeds, we take those. Yeah, I really enjoy how this game is, like, artistically three-dimensional, but, like, mechanically two-dimensional. I love fun things like that. Even though sometimes it can make things a little bit hard to, distinguish whether or not they're, like, active or cosmetic elements. Even double jump might not be enough. Slightly embarrassing if so. Well, if so, that's just 2 reasons to come back here with, even better mobility. And I did find that war portrait thing, so I can just, like, what's the word? I can just get right back to the castle once I get there. Okay. Even if I didn't get quite as many things immediately as I'd hoped I would. Double jump is still an incredibly nice thing to have found. Lets me easily, like, reposition in combat, get a little bit of extra height. Think of all those boss fights where, like, I kept just barely getting clipped by, like, the heads of enemies I was trying to jump over, that kind of thing. Hey, and I kind of have options here. I think I want to go here. Yeah, the giant tower was off to the right. Yeah, so the green rooms are rooms that I can teleport between, and then the red rooms are safe rooms where I can save the game and restore my stuff. And actually, there's a non-zero chance that, what's-his-face the farmer has finished doing what farmers do. I don't actually know what the timescale is on that.
We'll be harvesting and...
So he's not done, but he is doing. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling it up here. If I can't go anywhere up here, I will go somewhere else. Such is the way of things. Yep, I gave him a rice seed, so he's growing rice. That's what farmers do. They grow you things if you give them seeds. He didn't even ask for, like, their compensation or anything. He's in it purely for the love of the game. Yeah, that enemy right there, that's the one that I killed and it dropped the familiar shard that became the sword that I've got right now. Yeah, I don't think I can quite jump up there. I do love the stained glass in the background. I would not describe myself as a fan of, like, religious institutions in general, but, like, stained glass type aesthetics I do really enjoy. Crusader's armor. And what have we here? Familiar Silver Knight, that sounds like fun. Oh my goodness, is this also a JoJo's reference? Okay, he doesn't look exactly like Chariot. Oh, I'm glad I went up there. I think I prefer my sword, though. I mentioned last time I was playing that the sword in particular has a really neat trait where rather than me needing to, like, level it up, it levels itself up. At least I think that that's unique to the sword. I might be wrong. That might just be a thing that, like, every familiar does. Thank you for the rotation in the headpads. I have not heard of the game The Artisan of Glimmet. Do elaborate. Do you make swords that fly? I know that there's a, an ARPG called Last Epoch, where one of the playable classes is essentially like a smith, where like all of your skills are essentially like you have created like equipment. Like rather than just being like incredibly proficient with like weapons and armor and such, like you have specifically like created it and it's almost like artificer type. So one of the things you can do is just like have a bunch of weapons that like you've made like flying around as familiars. Chill puzzle game about restoring stained glass windows from a lost kingdom. Interesting. On my YouTube shorts recently, like in my algorithm, I started getting videos from this one girl who like does stained glass stuff. It certainly seems interesting. And in particular, it strikes me as a hobby that's almost certainly easier to get into than, say, like, jewelry making. Glass being cheaper than, like, precious metals and gemstones and such. And the kitty's dead. Incredible. And then here comes the giant fist. I could go here. I could go back over here, look for something like perhaps along the draw. I can go over here. There's like a whole stretch here. And there's like all of this over here. I can't go over here yet. But maybe with the jump I can. I want to say that this is probably where like the next big bit of progress is. I don't remember where it is, but I do remember what has to happen before I can go down here. Speaking of puzzle games, one that I'll probably play on stream at some point. Though it kind of intimidates me because it's a puzzle game that like stumped me back when I first tried it, is Antechamber. In particular because like I'm exactly the sort of person that like Antechamber is like strong against. It's like a weird game where like the rules are constantly changing. And like I would personally say that like my strength is more like in deriving rules and like exploiting them. So when they're constantly changing, it kind of throws me off. Okay, what might I accomplish if I went down here? It looked like all that stuff was upside down, so I can't go there just yet. I could try going underneath. No, I can't. I don't have, I don't have the ability to swim. I might be able to do something here, but overall it's looking more and more like I want to go either here or here. So I think I'll go over here. Nearest teleporter is in town, so I'll go to town. I didn't actually know that there was anything up there. I was just like, wait, what if I pulled an ocarina? What if I rode the drawbridge, yeah? It worked out. Sometimes acting on your impulsive thoughts just works out, I suppose. I don't know if the rice is finished growing, but I did just remember that, the other girl gave me, like, 5 of it for, like, completing that quest.
I finished the harvest. Ugh. Here's your share.
Cool.
Here to play.
Please take corn, I suppose. Actually, potato.
Can you plant this?
Sure.
So maybe now I can cook something. First things first though, saving. I should also consider, restocking on healing items.
What are we transmuting this time?
Okay, I can make a rice ball.
I'll go with this. Great!
I do want to make everything at least once where possible. Oh, I could really go for some cinnamon cookies. At some point I might actually just have to, like, sit down and, like, make a list of everything that I need to eat and just, like, go grind. Gonna lay down. Have a wonderful rest of your night. It has been a while since I've upgraded my scarf. Bat wings could be cute. I do kind of wish that, more of these actually changed your appearance.
I'll go with this.
Ooh, I like it.
Tell me, what exactly is the Liber Logaeth?
A book written by an alchemist. It's written in the book.
But demons are not.
I already got that dialogue. I just played back because I died, and whether or not I'd seen it or not got reset. Alright, cute Batwing Cave. We can take those. I don't think it makes me jump any higher, though.
There's this narrow horizontal.
As a matter of fact, Zangetsu just sent a message arrow about that.
Oh,
In the gruesome hall of experiments, seek the demon darting through narrow holes.
Darts. Sounds difficult to catch.
Even the trickiest creatures have a weakness. You will find it. Now, is there anything else you need from me? What are you looking to buy?
I have not very much gold.
Thank you.
I should probably start saving, especially if, like... Especially if I want to buy, like, a bunch of ingredients. But alright, Alchemist Lab, I can get the next big ability. If memory serves, that's this area over here. find a way up there... Getting a fair amount of Dantalian shards. I don't think I can cross this until I can approach it from the left. Which is fine by me. Accidentally found myself surrounded by demons. I think this isn't necessarily where Zangetsu wants me to go. I think I might want to go down there. But this was a save point, so it was worth going there anyway. Rude. What are you? Thunder Elemental? That sounds like it would give me some sort of like electric shock, shard. Which sounds like something that I would have an interest in. I do like electricity. I don't actually see a way down here. I don't think I thought this through. Unfortunate. This is fine. I'm just farming levels, that's all. Totally. Malediction. That's a passive shard, I believe. Resist petrification. Oh. I also got a new weapon. A sword with a scythe-like blade. Okay, so it lacks the flight of the flying sword. Rather self-evidently. But it does hit a bit harder. And in general, I should probably try to get used to the movement of like of like other weapons. Because even if I kept using it, I wouldn't be able to rely on the flying sword forever. It would eventually need to be upgraded. don't actually know if poison can kill me, and I might be about to find out. Okay, HP to 1. That is concerning, but not insurmountable. Oh. Mithridate is what gets rid of poison. I was looking for an item called Antidote. Jump scared by my own familiar. This is fine. Sweets, recipe. MP max up. If I went the other way, I think I get HP up. Which I don't recall if that would actually fully heal me, but if it did, that'd be awesome, actually. Beast Guardian. Heck yeah, full heal, we take those. Sometimes pressing forwards isn't unwise. Iron Breastplate. Seems like a straight downgrade to the Crusader's armor. There's an awful lot of stuff going on at once in here. Okay, I think I can get up and over like this. Recipe for special ammunition. Making sure that there's not one of these. Functional use save room. May as well check on the farmer while I'm here.
Look out, far.
Okay. Does what's her face have any other quests for me?
Hello.
Oh, some tunic. There you are.
Here's what you want.
This is it. This is the...
Right.
A normal ring for Caleb.
Thank you. Hello.
I got plenty of those.
Here's what you...
This is it. This is the...
Right.
Noelle wants a brigandine. In exchange, I will get pizza.
Thank you. Hello.
Here's what you...
This is it.
Which is a food item that I can eat.
Right.
Oh, they want my bat wings in exchange for chocolate cake.
Thank you.
Worth.
Hello.
Here's what you...
This is...
Right.
Rava Bural in exchange for toy shoes. I don't know if I want to do that one per se. I do have the item, but I don't know if I can get another one. I'll just sit on that one just a little bit. Okay, so these foods do actually heal. So not only do they give stats, they are healing items. That's very good to keep in mind. Especially if there's like any decent food items that aren't particularly hard to farm. Because trying to keep myself stocked up on potions was like difficult. I'm pretty sure I saved my game. I don't think I forgot to do that. Elevator unlocked. Excellent. I've done it. Whilst small, the creature I summoned was most assuredly at even. I thought I was clutching at straws when I tried using the crystal as a medium, but what power! Distressingly, my small demon nearly devastated the guild before I could destroy it. The thought of a whole army crossing over sends chills up my spine. The demon we vanquished produced a red crystal. I'm calling this a shard to differentiate it from the white crystal, but both are strange and fascinating. The crystal exhibits a kind of magnetic pull on the shards, suggesting it may be capable of binding with the shard's demonic power. But how do I make more of it? Can't do anything there just yet. I've apparently been here. And I don't think I can do anything here from underneath. Okay, so if you hold down up, she'll pose. Good to know. The JoJo references abound. $100G. Something about this room feels a little bit weird, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Invisible blade. Made invisible through sorcery. Tips Oshus. Strike enemies with lightning that blinds them no matter where they are. Oh. I'm very on board with this. Tips Osseous. It's not just lightning bolt, it's chain lightning. That's even better. Helm Splitter for the honey bombing or the swordfish down down X. Well, I'm always happy to find a chain lightning, so... It's usually my favorite spell in, like, any game. Okay, open that up. Riding habit. Much higher defense, substantially lower, or much higher defense, slightly lower attack. I think I can live attack. Underblurred Plume. I presume that's like a crafting material for something. Yeah. Alright. Yeah. Also, yeah. This is one of the few bosses I remember very clearly. It's so distinct. True Arrow, definitely gonna put more work in than the other one though, at least for this.
Scrumptious.
Mikichi, welcome. Also, yeah, this boss definitely makes an impression. I agree. Wait, might I just save down here? Or a given definition of save, yeah? I know it's my sword screaming, but for a second I thought it was the boss. Like, wow, what did I do to you? Other than beat you? Infernal Breath. Thank you for the GG. I didn't actually expect to beat that first try, and I kind of feel like I cheesed it a little bit. I consumed like 2 entire pizzas and an entire cake. Yeah, I definitely feel like now that like my toolkit has expanded some, I'm gonna have a substantially easier time. I have technically not played any Castlevania games before this. I have played a bunch of Metroid games, I have played Hollow Knight, and I have played this game before on normal, but that was a very long time ago, so I've forgotten most of it. And it was on normal, so... But it is a genre that I really do enjoy. Silver bromide, that's what's her face needed for the pictures. Yeah, Castlevania is absolutely on my to-do list. I've actually even got the Ultimate Edition of what's it called? Symphony of the Night? Like the Saturn port with like all the quality of life stuff from like the PSP port. Oh, also, thank you for the follow. I didn't even notice at first. And it is absolutely on the list of things that I'm interested in trying. Imagine I beat that boss, got ganked by a werewolf, and had to do it all over again. That'd be embarrassing. in light of that thought, I'm actually gonna go run back up to the save point. Yeah, having not played any of them, just just hearing things like, oh, this is like the definitive version of the game. It definitely does sound like the version that like I've got lined up to play is like the version to play. It is absolutely a game that I'm looking forward to. That said, we're about to run ads. I can't stop them, but what I can do is line up a 5-minute break with them. So please use this time to refill your beverage, go to the bathroom, anything that would take you about 5 minutes. I will see you shortly. I return. Much to the presumable dismay of that bird. Okay, so that got me the silver bromide. I don't know what that actually accomplishes. Like, I know that it lets me use the portrait, but I don't remember what that lets me do. But the easiest way to find out is to try, so... I should also consider trying to upgrade some of the shards that I've been using a lot.
Hi, what are we transmuting this time?
Like this sword.
I'll go with this.
I would need another sword fragment for that.
So, Johannes, you and Dominique are old acquaintances.
Yes. She's risked much to help us, despite her position in the church. For example, she arranged for the galleon that took us here, and she gave us use of one of her homes. That was where you first woke up.
Why would she be so kind?
I don't know, but she seems interested in alchemy. She even helped me develop the rite that stopped the crystal from overtaking you. As far as I'm concerned, she took us in after the guild's destruction when no one else would, and has allowed me to continue in my research. We owe her a huge debt.
We do.
What a sweet lady she is. Let's see if What's-His-Face has finished doing what farmers do.
I finished the harvest.
He did.
And
Corn.
Can you plant this?
sure.
Behold, Dominique, silver bromide.
I found the materials you need.
Then let's make some photographs. Relax. You look too serious.
It's not easy to smile on command, you know.
You are wearing a face-obscuring mask, Miriam.
Well, do your best and hold still. Don't move a muscle until I tell you. And you can breathe now.
Finally.
All finished. You can move around if you want.
Whew.
Here you are. One photograph. Keep it as a memento.
It looks exactly like me. How strange.
Identification. If memory serves, I need that for something, but I don't remember for what. As for me, kind of like butting into like your conversation there. The only Resident Evil that I've played was the one with Mr. X, and I never actually finished it. I was like playing it in a voice call with somebody, and just like they ended up being too busy to keep playing or to keep watching as I played it. So it kind of just like fell to the wayside, regrettably. To remake, that sounds about right. I can actually check my my Steam library. And just be like, oh yes, this is the one with playtime. It must have been that one. I can actually do that. Hold on. Won't take a minute. Let's see. Yeah, Resident Evil 2, I last played it back in 2020. Yeah, so I didn't have the flower. I didn't have the fairy the last time I was here. If you sit here with the fairy,
Cinder and blight veil the air, bring the night, and your eyes they close. Sweet repose suspended. The hours fly, years go by. Then the morning comes, shadowed by the moon, and the angels for whom you speak cry for light, cry for all of us, shards of hope gathered in the name of the meek. Rise, our champion, now rise.
I knew about that one. What are the other two? I'm not familiar with the other two. Yeah, I've seen a bunch of like Castlevania references and a bunch of like JoJo references. This game really feels like a love letter to all of it. Load belt. Increase your back step ability. Without fairy, with and in Japanese. I tried sitting at the piano without the fairy, and nothing happened. Maybe I had to wait longer. Can I change the language on the fly? Yes, I can. Piano is actually one of the instruments that I'd love to be good at.
よいしょ。
青き月は闇を巡り赤き夜に時は眠る永遠に天使たちの記憶に流れる想いはかすかな希望を信じて歌い続ける近いし夢
Those are the only two languages. Unfortunate. I think that was just the same song. I might have misremembered. It is kind of cool to me that, like, there are separate songs. Normally for stuff like that, they just dub it in the original language and that's what you get. I'm in danger. Well, that was regrettable. I could have gotten out of that one if I'd played better. Luckily, we can't unlisten to music by virtue of getting our shit rocked, pardon my French. So this is fine. I saw those two items pop up, like ginger oak. And my first thought was like, oh yeah, if like Ash's mom and Professor Oak got together. I'm in danger. Death cry. Okay, given how close I am to dying again, And also how close I am to a save room. I feel like I should probably save. Garden of Silence. Ow. Yeah, I could go down there, or I could go here. I found myself here first, so let's go here for now. Bridge of Evil. Oh, this is ringing a bell. Lily tail, lily ears. I thought that might be equipment. Oh, puppy. I like how it's literally just called puppy. FL407, that's probably a reference to something. I'm gonna need like a train pass or similar to get through that, I think. Oh, those are the piss of the Kickstarter backers? Awesome. I can transform into a lily. Oh, rude. Well, that could have gone better. But now I know it's that way. I don't have a... Yes, this is hard mode. Oh. Sinister Rag. Yeah, when I first beat this game, it was on normal mode, and this playthrough's on hard. Cursed Ring. Embodies all the hatred in the world. Strength and int up, luck down. Well, 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 what do we have here? Rude. Health is concerningly low. Elemental ammunition. This looks like something where there'd be something in the wall. There was not something in the wall there. Perhaps over here. Well, it's the thought that counts sometimes. Surumaru or Dojigiri. Channel your fighting spirit into your blade, then unleash it. Oh, excellent. Save room. I needed this. That guy over there is literally just Shovel Knight. Circular Ripper. Shovel Armor. Furry Powder. Is that Kojima? I think that might be Kojima. It's like they tried to bury him. Or not Kojima, the, Iga, that's his name. I was like, what's the name of that one Japanese developer? Igarashi. Thank you. Sansetsu-san. Yeah, I did not mean Kojima. Kojima is Metal Gear. Igarashi is Castlevania. In fact, the only Metal Gear game I've played is Metal Gear Rising. Though I guess technically that's not an entirely truthful statement. The first Metal Gear game I played was Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, because I thought that was the first game. Because in the Metal Gear Solid HD collection for the PS3, they are bundled as Peace Walker 2 and 3 in that order. So I just assumed that it was Peace Walker 2, 3. Oh well, I know better now. I really like Chain Lightning. Best spell, every game. Rene, or maybe it's pronounced Rene, I'm not sure. I always try to pronounce things correctly. Traverser's Ring. Increases attack power in proportion to how much of the map you've completed. Alright. That will only get better. Oh, rude. I feel like every time I get the animation for like, oh, you have got the summoned player shard, I feel like every time I die shortly thereafter. So I should probably try to stay alert. Oh. Excellent. Health. We take those. And a shortcut. Even better. A bit of a journey, but it absolutely paid off. Another Uthbear sword. Excellent. I've already got one, but like maybe I can like stitch them together or something. Shovel. And another HP up. I wish I came here first. Oh well. It all ends up in the same place in the end. Part of me wants to sell those gemstones because I presume they must be, like, valuable. And part of me is like, no, hold on to them. They're clearly for, like, crafting. Can't go that way without being on the other side first. Still plenty to go, though. Shovel Knights also drop Sapphire. Good to know. Oh, you know what? I wonder if that's a reference, because in Shovel Knight, he collects gems. Oh, steel equipment. That is how I get most of it. Bit of like a non sequitur thought, but like, I wonder if there are any other games in which stealing equipment is like so incredibly necessary to progression, to the same extent that like it is so in Disgaea. Like in Disgaea, basically the only way to get like really good endgame equipment is to steal it. Like, there are certainly games where thievery is an option. I guess some Final Fantasies have it to where, like, the very best stuff has to be stolen. Critical Ring. Increases the likelihood of critical hits. Shoutouts to the time I was playing Final Fantasy IX brought arguably the worst party possible into the fight with Ark. Used Steel as my very first action of the fight and then got the Holy Lance. Good times. I feel like maybe I need to be doing something over here. Surprise, everybody, I'm back.
I finished. And
Thank you for the corn. Make some more rice.
Can
Yeah, I will say the start of this playthrough was definitely really rough, but like... after the second or third boss, it's definitely feeling much, much more manageable. I think I forgot to upgrade my shards. Oh well. What's the worst that could happen? Shoutouts to my first playthrough where I just completely forgot that that was a mechanic at all. Yeah, I don't think I can get up there. With what I've got... Yeah, I think to get up here, I need the, I think I need the thing from the boss that I got hinted towards. I did break a hole in this tower, so maybe I can get through to the other side now, in a way that I couldn't before. And I just never noticed, because that tower is kind of a pain. Rude. Chaser arrow. I've also got the picture of Miriam herself. I just had to sneeze, but I was not actually able to sneeze. It's definitely not a sensation that I would ever sign up for. I'm very grateful that the elevator actually just allows itself to be summoned. Like, it could have just as easily been like, oh, if you didn't leave it there, too bad. Not once in her life has Miriam skipped cardio. I'm pretty sure that there's a shard that lets you sprint, kind of like the, kind of like the speed booster from Metroid. Though evidently I don't currently have it. I'm pretty sure it does exist. I am starting to think that, like, perhaps this is not the place to be. But sunk cost, you know how it is. Yeah, the thing that I'm looking for, I'm pretty sure is, like, in this area. It might even be here and I just, like, didn't explore hard enough. I suppose I will simply poke around further at the other end of this. I don't see anything on the map there. I should definitely look into upgrading my sword and probably Tepsosius. I've been using it so much, it would feel a little bit rude not to at this point. There are a bunch of platforms that I could potentially jump over. I don't know if double jump by itself is enough, but I suppose trying is the way to find out. Barnet's Rebuke. A great sword with an internal steam engine adding power to each swing. Oh, I can hold it. I like that. Aesthetically, I love it. Mechanically, I'm not sure if I'm not too used to the faster swords at this point. think I'll go back to the heart. Alright. Yeah, I do think it's worth my time to try and get things done over here. Now, I gotta be really careful on my way to the save room. I'm in danger. I don't want to waste resources when... way through is right there. There may or may not be a bead of sweat on my head right now. But I got away with it, so it's fine. Okay, can I climb up at all? I don't think I can, not with the shards that I've got. What's his face? The barber is up there still. Kitty. Ever seen this like Rodriguez Stornova? Oh, you know what? I was probably meant to be here like the whole time. I probably could have found this way earlier. Oh well. Or maybe not. Can't go down here until I've been here already. Need to be able to swim to go here, need to be able to swim to go here. I might be able to do something here, but I left that area. Which, in hindsight, may have been foolish. I don't think I can do anything here with the shards that I've currently got access to. I don't think I can do anything over here with the shards that I currently have access to. I think I want to try exploring this area a bit more. I'm pretty sure what I'm looking for is like in the old alchemy labs, which I think are in the sewers. At the end of the day, it's exploration. light elemental could be fun. I do enjoy abilities that are like light abilities as well. Especially then some sort of like dark creature. It's always fun when you use like an anathemic power. It appeals to the Chunibyo inside of me. Once more into the well. Didn't have enough didn't have enough mana for lightning. This is fine. Okay, so like literally nothing was stopping me from dropping down here. Okay, another shortcut chart. I would have felt a little bit dumb if like something really important had been down here and I just didn't stick my nose into it. Pia. This is a man.
Benjamin, what are you doing here?
Oh,
His best.
sorry. Right before I went whoosh, I remembered this huge waterfall I saw in me travels, and
You want me to kick you?
I said I'm sorry. Can't we just try this again?
Have a waystone.
Oh, thank you for bringing this.
Now remember, picture your house. Your house.
Oh, well, I'm not daft, you know. Oh, before I go, let me give you this for helping me.
Should I assume that worked or not?
5,000 gold, we take those. I would not be able to use a waystone, like at all. I have aphantasia, so I just don't meet the criteria. Perish, chair mimic. Cherish. Chair mimics actually gave one of the funniest shards. It doesn't accomplish much, but it's very entertaining. Alright, so I simultaneously got more and less done than I hoped I would tonight. I think we're gonna call it there, though. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it each and every time. Next scheduled stream is going to be on Wednesday. The game is going to be Yoshi's Island. The next time that I'm playing this game in particular will be on Friday. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful night. I hope to see you again. Let's find somebody to raid. Is anybody else in Bloodstained? It's actually just me. That's a little sad. I like this game. Oh, looks like somebody I'm following is doing a charity stream, so let's go raid them. They're doing an archipelago between Wind Waker, Nono, and Goose. What those mean, I'm not sure, but it looks like they're just starting. Right? Either way, have a wonderful night.